The first egg hit her shoulder before she even saw them coming. Cold yolk and sticky whites ran down her faded denim jacket, soaking into the fabric. Sarah Mitchell froze in place, clutching the basket of fresh eggs she had just gathered from the co-op. Laughter erupted from behind the barn, sharp and cruel. "Nice catch, farm girl." A voice jeered. She turned slowly, heart pounding, to see Jake Turner and his group of friends standing there with cartons of eggs in their hands, smirking like they owned the world. Sarah wasn't the kind of girl who sought attention. 17 years old, she was quiet, hard-working, and carried the weight of her family's farm on her shoulders after her father's injury left him unable to work much. She got up before sunrise every day to feed the animals, tend the fields, and manage chores most teenagers couldn't even imagine. She didn't complain, didn't boast, she simply did what needed to be done. But for kids like Jake, her quiet strength made her an easy target. The second egg hit her basket, cracking against the brown shells she had worked so hard to collect. She bit her lip, fighting the sting in her eyes. "What's wrong, Mitchell? Gonna cry?" Jake taunted, tossing another egg up and catching it in one hand. His friends snickered, enjoying the show. Sarah looked at them, not with tears but with something they didn't expect: steel. She set her basket down slowly, wiped the slime from her jacket, and stood tall. "You done?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through their laughter. The boys paused, taken aback. Jake smirked, unwilling to let go of his audience. "Nah, I think we've got a few more." He wound up, ready to throw again. But before the egg could leave his hand, Sarah stepped forward with a confidence that made him falter. "Go ahead," she said, locking eyes with him. "Waste your fun, but when you're done, you're going to help me clean this up. Because I may be a farm girl, but I'm not your punching bag. And if you think throwing eggs makes you tough, maybe you should step inside the barn and see how you handle a real chore." The group laughed nervously, not sure if she was bluffing. Jake raised his eyebrows, clearly thrown off by her sudden boldness. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sarah didn't flinch. "It means," she said firmly, "you think I'm weak. But this farm has made me stronger than you'll ever know. You want to egg me? Fine, but if you're so tough, come crack hay bales, lift feed sacks, or walk a mile in my boots. Let's see who's really strong." For a moment, the barnyard fell silent except for the clucking of hens. Jake shifted uncomfortably, egg still in his hand. His friends exchanged glances, uncertain whether to laugh or back away. Sarah's unwavering gaze made Jake feel smaller than he ever had before. And then, almost like fate, the egg slipped from his fingers, exploding on his own sneakers. The boys burst into laughter, this time not at Sarah, but at Jake. His face burned red. "Shut up," he barked, but it was too late. His own prank had backfired. Sarah bent down, calmly picked up her basket, and said, "Looks like you cracked yourself." She walked past them without fear, her dignity intact, leaving Jake standing in the mess he made. But the story didn't end there. The next day at school, whispers about what happened on the farm spread like wildfire. For once, the laughter wasn't at Sarah's expense, it was at Jake's. People started to notice Sarah differently. They saw her as strong, not shy, brave, not boring. Even a few teachers heard about how she stood her ground. Jake avoided her for weeks, humiliated. But eventually, he showed up at her farm one Saturday, awkwardly carrying a carton of eggs. He shuffled his feet, cleared his throat, and muttered, I came to help. Figured you could use an extra hand." Sarah looked at him, her expression unreadable. She could have turned him away, but instead, she nodded. "Grab those feed sacks," she said. And for the first time, Jake realized just how hard her life really was, and how wrong he had been to mock it. By the end of the day, his hands were blistered, his back sore, and his pride humbled. He apologized, not with fancy words, but with effort. And Sarah, though she didn't forget what he did, accepted his change. Sometimes, respect is earned in the unlikeliest ways. From that day forward, Jake never threw another egg. And Sarah, she carried herself a little taller, knowing she didn't just stand up to a bully, she showed the world that quiet strength can crack even the toughest shell. Jake Turner never forgot the first day he worked on the Mitchell farm. His arms ached for days, and every muscle in his body reminded him of the humiliation he once laughed at. But something strange happened that day. Instead of feeling anger toward Sarah, he felt respect. She never mocked him, never rubbed his weakness in his face. She simply worked beside him, steady and strong, as if to say, this is what life is about, getting the work done. Yet change doesn't happen overnight. At school, Jake still carried the reputation of being a tough guy, the one who picked on others to keep his own insecurities hidden. His friends teased him for spending time at Sarah's farm, calling him Farmer Jake. He laughed it off in front of them, but deep inside, the words didn't sting the way they used to. He had seen what real toughness looked like, and it wasn't throwing eggs. One afternoon, Sarah was loading hay bales onto a trailer when Jake showed up again. She raised an eyebrow, surprised to see him. "Didn't think you'd be back," she said. He shrugged. "Figured you could use some help." She studied him for a moment, then handed him a pair of work gloves. "Fine, don't drop that bale. It's heavier than it looks." Hours passed, sweat poured, and for the first time, Jake felt like he was doing something meaningful. He didn't talk much, but he listened, to the rhythm of the farm, to Sarah's quiet explanations of why each chore mattered, and to the silence that wasn't awkward but grounding. As the weeks rolled on, Sarah noticed Jake changing. He was still rough around the edges, still loud at times, but his arrogance had softened. One day, when a group of kids at school started mocking a younger boy in the cafeteria, Jake did something no one expected. He stood up, slammed his tray down, and said, "Knock it off. You think you're tough? Go carry a 50-pound feed sack. Until then, shut your mouth." The cafeteria went silent. Sarah, sitting 2 tables away, caught his eye. He didn't smile, but he nodded, almost as if to say, "You taught me that." But Sarah had her own challenges too. The farm wasn't easy to keep afloat. With her father's health still weak and bills piling up, there were nights when she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if all her strength would be enough. She didn't tell Jake this. She didn't tell anyone. The weight she carried was heavy, but it was hers. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the fields, Sarah broke down in the barn. The cows were fed, the chores done, but she couldn't stop the tears. Jake, who had stayed late to finish stacking hay, walked in and froze. He had never seen her like this. "Hey," he said softly, unsure for once, "what's wrong?" She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. "Nothing, just tired." But Jake didn't buy it. He sat down beside her on the hay bale. "You don't have to do this alone, you know." Sarah shook her head. "It's not your burden." "Maybe not," Jake admitted, "but I made things harder for you once. Let me make it easier now." For the first time, Sarah saw sincerity in his eyes. Not the mocking grin, not the cocky smirk, but a boy who was learning what it meant to care. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay, but don't think this means you're off the hook for egging me." Jake chuckled, and for once, the sound wasn't cruel, it was genuine. That was the turning point. Jake didn't just help on weekends anymore. He came after school, he carried what Sarah couldn't, and when things broke, he fixed them. Word spread through town, not about Sarah being the quiet girl who got bullied, but about Jake Turner, the boy who was finally turning into a man. Months later, at the county fair, Jake stood beside Sarah as she presented her family's prize-winning livestock. Kids who once laughed at her now clapped. Parents nodded with respect, and Jake, once the boy with eggs in his hand, now stood with calloused palms and pride in his chest. As they walked back to the truck, Jake looked at her and said, "Funny, isn't it? I threw eggs at you once." Sarah smirked. "Yeah, and you got cracked." They both laughed, the sound echoing through the fairgrounds, not as bully and victim, but as 2 unlikely friends who had changed each other's lives.